get started, I want to tell you how much we appreciate everybody for being here tonight, but also for being here for the whole series. And as you know, this is the last of the series. We had 8 weeks, 8 lectures, or 8 classes, and we hope to do it again next summer. So we'll, it's like Billy Carroll said, there are endless topics that we can talk about. So we'll look forward to next year also. But this is also the night of the raffle, so after the speaking, we'll go ahead and do the raffle. This would be your last chance to buy raffle tickets. If you want to buy some, just slip out there and buy some. There's lots of things raffled off, so we'll do that, and then we'll have another little activity afterwards. Anyway, tonight it's going to be a very interesting topic, remembering Alma Spikes. And as far as I know, this is the first time that we've had anything dedicated to her memory and dedicated in honoring her. So we're thrilled about that. Our speakers tonight, of course, are Carroll, Virginia Stevens, and Bill Holobaugh, and everybody else in the audience that remembers Miss Alma. And that's definitely going to include 2 of her grandchildren who are here, Steve and Mary Virginia, Steve Spikes and Mary Virginia Jackson. So we're hoping that they'll speak up. But if any of you all have recollections and memories about Miss Alma, just interrupt and tell us the stories, because some of us never had the opportunity to go to school with her, although I think she passed away in 1975, and so some of us remember her.
Everybody that does, raise your hand.
Well,
If you remember.
okay.
Wow.
Also, I want to remind everybody that all of these lectures, the entire series, is on videotape, and it's on YouTube. So if you missed any of them, I think you could probably find them on YouTube or at the museum website or at Remember When and Pocahontas Facebook page. So with that, I think Virginia Stevens is going to start remembering Miss Alma.
Good. Good evening.
Good evening.
Well,
Microphones.
oh, sorry about that. Okay, turn it on. All right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're here tonight to honor Miss Alma. She was a beloved teacher in the Pocahontas school system. Miss Alma was born February the 22nd, 1888. She married Dr. Jesse M. Spikes, and they were parents of 2 children, Mary Bentley Spikes Barnett and Dr. Ben Spikes, better known to most of us as Booge, the dentist. I remember him too well. But Miss Alma lost her husband at a very young age. He passed away in 1921, so she was alone for a lot of years and never remarried. She raised her children very well, and she saw that they were educated. And she passed away at the age of 87 on November the 6th, 1975. Now, Miss Alma could come off pretty, shall we say, pretty gruff sometimes. A lot of kids were a little bit leery of her and a little bit scared of her. But you've heard the old saying, people that have, they're all bark and no bite. Well, actually, I learned at a fairly early age that that was Miss Alma Spikes. Our old school that I'm sure most of you remember, some of you may not know, that we had this big old 2-story red brick building that sat up here on North Mars Street. And 1st grade through 6th grade, you went on the 1st floor. But when you reached the 7th grade, oh my, you got to go upstairs, and that was a special time. Well, we had a study hall. When you got up the top of the stairs, there was a wide doorway and a big study hall. And on the wall at the end of the doorway there was a big blackboard. It had a line right down the middle. It said boys and girls. Okay, you got up if you needed to go to the restroom, which was in the basement, so you had to go downstairs. you had to get up and put your initials on the blackboard. Well, one day, everyone was sitting there very quietly, studying or doing whatever, passing notes to each other, or anything we could get away with, of course. And Miss Alma was at her desk. Well, as I said, I was in the 7th grade and didn't really know Miss Alma. I was one of them kind of scared of her a little bit. Because she could, you know, Miss Alma could, if you made a move, she could go like that, and you just wished you could just melt and run down on the floor and disappear. It scared you to death. So anyway, the study hall, at that time our school was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Anytime you walked in that building, it just had a sense of very quietness and stillness. So we were all sitting there very quietly, studying, and all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, all right, who's the smart aleck in here? I want to know who's done this. And everybody said, what? What? She pointed to the blackboard, and here were the initials, P.H.S., Pocahontas High School. What else would you think? Okay, she said, now I want to know who did this. Everybody, nobody knew anything. Well, all right, she said. If you didn't do it, somebody in here saw who did, and you better speak up. And she was really getting loud and scary sounding, you know. Boy, I thought, my gosh, you know, what's she going to do to us? Well, after a few minutes of this, walking the floor and sort of raving and ranting, this young man come walking up the stairs, quietly walked over to the blackboard, reached up and erased P.H.S. And he turned around, and his name was Perry Hyde Stubble. And that's just what happened. Everybody just broke up and started laughing, and Miss Alma was standing there with her hands over her face. And she was shaking all over. She was laughing so hard. So I knew right then she really wasn't near as bad as she let on like, you know. She had her bluff in on everybody in that schoolhouse, probably the other teachers too, because she could really scare you. But I loved Miss Alma. I always loved Miss Alma. But we had a Halloween carnival every year. I'm sure some of you are old enough here to remember our big Halloween carnivals. We would have booths up and down each side of the old gymnasium. And Miss Alma was our homeroom teacher. And we would do anything to keep Miss Alma as our homeroom teacher. We always just loved her. And so we were planning our Halloween carnival, and so several of us would go to her house every week and after school, and we had the haunted house thing. So we just had the best time at her house. She would make cocoa for us, and we'd sit around and plan all the things we were going to have as scary as we could make them, and she was just really a lot of fun, and we just dearly loved her. And so we enjoyed that much, all of that a lot. So one day, we were there in the study hall again very quietly, and I had gotten up and gone back behind her desk. Now this was in the newer building. They began tearing down the big old building, and so they built another smaller building out back, and my last couple of years in high school, I went out there in that building. And we were in the study hall, and you know, kids, all of a sudden, 2 or 3 or 4 boys back in the very back end where they always, you know how boys are. They get back in the back so they can get away with their meanness. So they were back there, and all of a sudden, one of them fell out of his chair and turned over the chair, and all of this going on, you know, and of course Miss Alma looked over those glasses. Boys, settle down back there. Get quiet and straighten up. You know how she was doing, and so they all straightened up and everybody got settled down, and I walked up to check out whatever book I had found. And she was reading the newspaper when that happened, so she pulled the newspaper up in front of her and she was sitting there just laughing. And I walked up and she looked up at me and she said, "Don't you dare ever tell anybody I was laughing at them." I said, "Your secret's safe with me, Miss Alma. I'll never tell." So she was just such a pleasure to be with. She really was. And our senior trip, we took a road trip to Little Rock, and Miss Alma, being our homeroom sponsor, was in charge of this trip. And Kona Jean Upshaw, some of you I know knew Kona Jean, was one of the ladies that went along on the trip. And in later years, she told me that she was scared to death to be in charge of a bunch of girls that night that we were down there. We were all in a hotel. And she said she just worried and worried to Miss Alma how nervous she was about it, being in charge of that many kids and everything. And she said, Miss Alma said, "Now, Kona Jean, you don't have one thing to worry about. You just relax and have fun and just watch the girls, but just remember, you don't see everything." And I thought that was so cute of Miss Alma to say that. You just don't see everything. Well, then, as she grew older, one day she told us that the superintendent, and I'm not real sure who the superintendent was, this was in about 1949, 50, long in there. I don't know if it was Mr. Lincoln or Mr. Newman, I'm not sure.
I don't think Newman was here yet.
Mills was still here then?
Well, you
Okay.
Yeah,
had
Newman
Lincoln,
was here yet.
Yeah,
Newman.
and then Newman, okay. Anyway, he decided that Miss Alma was getting older and probably needed to retire. So he went to her and suggested that she retire. So she told us about it, and she said, "But I don't want to." She said, "I really don't want to. I'm just not ready." Well, a bunch of us got together and talked about it. We were very upset to think of losing Miss Alma. We just did not want to lose her. And so we decided, you know how kids are, somebody brought up the subject and said, "Well, let's just get up a petition." I said, okay. So we did. And I guess every kid in school signed that petition. And so anyway, we took it. Several of the president of our class, and I don't know who else, took the petition to the superintendent and told him, "If you make Miss Alma quit, then we're going to go on a sit-down strike." And we were going to sit down in the hallways, and we were not going to do anything unless they kept Miss Alma. And by golly, he did. So it worked. And she stayed a number of more years, and I really don't know what year she retired. But that's how much we thought of Miss Alma Spikes. And when I put together the cookbook for the sesquicentennial for the museum. And so in planning the cookbook, I decided to use women of distinction around Pocahontas as my divider pages in the cookbook. And of course, Miss Alma was one of them that I used. So I put their picture in the cookbook and I wrote something under each name. So I would like to read to you what I wrote, and this is what I felt in my heart about Miss Alma. Mrs. Alma Spikes was one of the most loved and respected teachers who ever graced the halls of our Pocahontas public schools. Our elementary school proudly carries her name today. Miss Alma, as she was lovingly called by her many students, left all who knew her with fond memories of their school days. Thank you, and I'm going to turn this over to whoever wants to take over now. Ann, would you like to talk about Miss Alma now?
Well, I need to get it over, I might forget it. I'll be 95 tomorrow if I live. I've known, I learned who Miss Alma was when I was 3 years old. I was born in 1922, up on Thomasville Avenue, 2 houses up from the King House, the Miss Hattie King House there, and in my grandmother Martin's house. And we lived there, my parents lived there with my mother's mother for 2 years. And then when I was 3, we moved down on Marsh Street. But I still, back then in 24, I could still walk up to grandmother's because really Pocahontas was just a country town, so Mother wasn't afraid to let me walk to grandmother's all the way up to Thomasville Avenue. The only thing was I couldn't hardly get by the Spikes house because of Booge. Here I was walking by. Booge was a popular boy. He was Miss Alma's son, of course, and he always had a yard full of boys, and they were playing ball. And here I would go by, and hey, boys, quit playing. This girl here knows poems. She can say poems real good. See, my aunt lived here then, and Aunt Wita she taught piano, she taught voice, she taught expression, which was all kinds of poems, and this, that, and the other poems were called expression then. And she had taught me about a dozen or more of all kinds. I remember till this day several of them. One of them was I Ate the Cake, and another one was, oh well, I can't even remember it. But she gave her recitals in the auditorium at the high school, which was also the place that basketball was played. And of course the building isn't even there anymore, but it was there for about 100 years. And Aunt Wita would give her recitals, and of course Booch went because Miss Alma took him and his sister, and he just really liked my performance. So he wanted me to perform again every time I went by going to grandmother's, and I just couldn't get by. And he would say, boys, we're not going to play anymore. She's going to say poems. Anyway, I would say a poem, scared to death, shaking all the way, and then I'd start, oh, wait a minute, say an urn. I don't know another one. Yes, you do. And then he'd tell me, and I'd have to say another one. By the time I got through with 10 of them, I was really worn out. And finally, he'd let me go. The boys boys weren't as interested as he was anyway. And I finally told Mother, I'm going to have to quit going to grandmother's. Booty Spikes up here won't let me buy. And she said, you go in and tell his mother that he's just not letting you buy. And trouble was, I never could get in and tell his mother. I didn't know Miss Alma, my favorite teacher when I finally got in school. I had Miss Alma in the 2nd grade. Everybody else had her upstairs, but they had her teach half a year, and I had her half a year. Second half, we had Alma Spikes. I guess Holobaugh knew Ella.
Ella Child.
I had
I
Ella.
think I do.
Had Ella Childs the second
Got along
half
good
year.
with Ella.
Yeah.
That was one that I had trouble with.
I guess you all know somebody came up here and asked Holobaugh if he was sober. Got ready to talk a while ago. One of the things that you might never have heard about Miss Alma was that she and Miss Georgia Hamill, Doc Hamill's wife, were the first ladies here that taught the Girl Scout. They were Girl Scout leaders. And I was one of the first Girl Scouts in town. Nobody, it's nearly impossible to tell you how she kept that study hall quiet. She just, if it got sort of out of hand, nobody else could keep it quiet, I don't mind telling you. The men couldn't. I know Arlo Tyra would try to, but he'd have to finally get a pedal and go down the aisle with it. But when she told them to get quiet, and they didn't, she simply would go down an aisle and they would be hanging across, talking to each other. And she would slam them on one side and hit them on the other. They would wish that they had not done that. She could clean the aisle out and come back up. Clean the aisle out and come back up the other aisle, and they got out of her way. They came back, and when she got through with every aisle, the room was quiet, and they stayed quiet for that entire hour. I made a mistake once of telling Miss Alma a joke that I'd heard that day, and I told Daddy later that I told Miss Alma a joke. He said, well, what was it? And I told him, he said, well, you told her a dirty joke. Well, even today, I don't think it's dirty, but it might be. She said, what I said was, Miss Alma, I heard that there was more gas in a bowl of beans than in an Arkansas tornado. And Daddy said, you shouldn't have said that. Anyway, Miss Alma laughed. I guess I always sort of felt sorry for Miss Alma when I heard that teachers back in her day made half of what they were supposed to. You can ask Jake about it. His mother worked all her life here as a teacher. And if you made $100, you got $50. That's what the county paid you. In vouchers, you weren't given a check. Now, if there were a lot of people that were able to buy up teachers' money, and they would pay half for land. See, back in the Depression, a lot of people lost land over in the bottoms that was very valuable. And they would, people that had the money to buy up land at that time got independently wealthy. And they would spend half for land that was worth a lot. And anyway, Miss Alma worked for half what she was worth. And back in the 30s or 40s, I remember that she decided to run for office. I knew that her father had held office when he was living, and he was crippled, but he was good at the fact that he could sit at a desk and work well, and he was elected many times. But Miss Alma was a lady, and no woman had ever been elected here. And in the 30s and 40s, it was unheard of. And her brother, Dr. Jim Spikes, and his wife, Marge, came over from Georgia and helped her candidate. And Marge said she just enjoyed that summer so much, helping Alma candidates go to all the speakings and everything. They usually spoke at 30 different places, they really tried, but in those days you did not elect a woman to an office. So I remember she stood it up on one stump. I went to one of her speakings. She pointed out the fact that she was the breadwinner for her family of 5. That she had fed her mother, her sister, and her 2 children, and herself all the years since her husband had died. But a man beat her. They didn't elect women in those days. And that was on top of the fact that she worked for half of what she was worth. And that was the way they did women back in those days, and the way they did teachers also. I made some notes to talk about tonight, and I can't read them. And that's about it. I believe Holobaugh, if you're sober, you
Them days are gone forever. Yeah, above my wildest dreams that I'd be talking about Miss Alma was down in school. I remember when I'm gonna try without it.
Well, it's better on the video if you use it, but.
Be fine.
Great.
Change.
I've always wanted to say check 1, 2, 1, 2.
We'll let you do that.
But I mean, this very building, George Hubble had a shoe store, and I got the wild idea that I needed taps on my toes. Well, said, I hear Bill Holobaugh. Well, that happened for about a week, and I knew that press was up. So I came back down here and told George, Mr. Hubble, that I need them taken off there. And Miss Alma was sooner or later going to catch me. But she was nicest lady I believe I've ever been around, and I've always said there's no difference between fear and respect. And I respected her, and I was about half scared of her. And she would, I understand that she had a pretty good right hand on her. I never did see any of that. She was an awful nice lady, and even when she passed, when she was in nursing home, my wife was working out there, and we'd drop by every day and see her. My mom was out there. I'd drop by and see her. And she just grinned, and I don't believe she knew us, but it was a pleasure to be around her. I often wondered how she got along so good with people. Well, she raised two kids just like us. They just running wild, and they slipped off and went to the high bank swimming, swam out at Mill Creek, and all that good stuff. And I noticed Miss Alma, I believe, finished Pocahontas High School in 1909. She, from this building here, this was built in 1903. She attended the University of Arkansas for a couple of years. And then she taught at Miss Alma taught at Pleasant Hill, I believe was the name of it. Pleasant Grove, Manson, Lesterville, Hamel, Ockety, and many other places. Now, during those days, they would only teach about 2 or 3 months a year. And that way she could teach at Lesterville, teach at Manson, and all around and get her in. She finally got to teaching, I believe in 1912 she started teaching in PHS. And she was, I forget how many years she was there, over 40 years. She was, yeah, I guess she was 40, over 40 years there. And she, let's talk about her children. I would, years ago, when I was in my mid-20s, I played a lot of golf, and I joined the Won't Ridge Country Club. Well, old Benny Booch, he had a little time, and he joined. And we played golf all the time, and then we, next 2 or 3 years, now this is Miss Alma's son I'm talking about. We played softball. One time in particular, I had an emergency operation on my appendix here at Pocahontas. I had to go to the hospital, and Hal had me in there, and it was Hal and the hospital administrator and the nurse and other. They're going to do a serious operation on me. Well, door kept on the operating room, kept beating and banging. And said, who is that? Hal said, who is that? They said, it's Booch. He said, Booch, we're having an operation in here. He said, I know. But said, ask Bill where the bat and balls are. And I said, they're in the trunk of my car. And I turned around to old Dr. Ray and I said, Hal, get him my keys. He said, hey, I'm the surgeon. So the nurse came by and said, I'll get him. And, oh, I don't know, we fished together for years. We fished. I had a bass boat, and Benny and Duke Pace we fished together all the time. He was constantly pestering somebody, you know. Always Booge would eat a sandwich and he'd put a minnow in it, you know, and things like that. We'd had a good relationship. Mary Bentley saw her every day. She worked the safe barn and around, saw her every day. Of course, I know Ginger and Steve. Her grandchildren. See, Bob, that would be Mary Bentley's boy, he played sports all the time, and I was his coach in Little League. And we went on up to Pony League and all up and down the line, and he was over at my house all the time. And then they played football together. They both played on the football team, the basketball team also this year. And it was just a nice outing. Now, we talked a while ago about Ann forgetting things. I was in the car one day with Catherine, and I was on bum bustle. I was absolutely out of the picture. I didn't know what I was trying to punch this and this and this. I said, Catherine, what's that 1,000 doing up there on that dashboard? She said, it's 10 o'clock. It hadn't been too long ago. I was sitting up there on the couch, you know, and I looked up on the mantle, and there was a big 90 up there. And I said, what's that 90 degree up there? She said, that's your birthday card. As we get older, we just get crazier. But Miss Alma also, I noticed something I picked up on, that she was talking about some early people that she had taught with, and also what was worthy of mention is their names. Here's some of the teachers back during her time that she's either taught with or were teaching a little bit before she was. That'd be Edgar and Bertie Hewlin, Rufus and Bertha Bach, Hutchie and Erica Phipps. Yeah, Hutchie Phipps, I remember Hutchie. And John Hogan, he was one of the first educators, I understand. Eugene Thompson, used to deliver paper for old Eugene. That's Summers' dad, wasn't it?
Yeah, Summers and S7.
And Charlie Dixon. Now, Charlie Dixon was Helen Bly's father, right?
No.
Don't think so?
Yeah.
We changed it.
Senior moments again.
I never called him Charlie.
Let me see. Here's something. Mert and Myrtle Bennett. That's some Bill folks.
Yeah,
I'm way too young to know these people.
They lived at Biggers.
And Vera Price.
Yeah.
And Mert Walton. Mert Walton.
Well, he was the postmaster forever.
Yeah, I used to deliver papers, and he had a big old chow dog, and he wanted that paper to be inside the front door. Dog never did get me, but it nipped my heel every day. Virginia Henderson. That's another for me.
4th grade.
Alma Bates. Lawrence Stubblefield. Wesley and Ethel Brown. Jeff Lawhorn. That's some old names. Earl and Hattie Smith. And Adora Pratt. Now, I also have on Mrs. Alma's, when she passed away, she had some pallbearers. Let's mention them. Joe Blankenship, that's Ken folks, isn't it?
Yeah. He didn't like to work, though.
Ain't no
good.
Vernon King. Vernon's an old friend. Marvin Wells.
These were teachers? Marvin
These
Wells?
were pallbearers.
Oh,
Sorry.
Dr. M.A. Balls
Matt.
and Dean Sleep.
Miss Mary's there.
Dean.
Now, one other thing that here's some more teachers that she thought was worth mentioning would be Ruth and Ada Baker. That's Jim and
Yeah.
Jack's both. J.M. White. I don't know who that is.
White,
White,
W-Y-A-T-T, that's Miss Vera's husband.
Oh, is that right?
Vera Price White.
Is that right? Lehman Gertie Mock.
Yeah.
Millard Bailey. That's, he's
Bill
an old
Bailey's,
teacher.
Bill Bailey's daddy.
Catherine didn't have, she didn't get to go to school here. She just, about a mile outside, had to go to Raven Springs. Instead of Miss Alma, she had a Mrs. Mooneyhan, I believe.
Yes.
I understand she laid the law down to him too. Let me see. Of course, it was a frosty apiary. Miss Alma Spikes and Mona. Mona was her sister.
Yes.
Oh,
Had her in second
And
grade.
my
My second grade. Who's
Will
that?
S. Spikes and Millard and Maud Parrish. They run the store just above this. See, drugstore. That's about all I have. I have one or two things about how many. She taught at Manson and Lesterville and a Pleasant Grove. I never found Pleasant Grove, but it was a, let's see, Pleasant Grove was a western hillside of Alberta. Was a meeting place for speakers, candidate speakers, picnics, school functions, and it was a wide area, and it's between Brockett, Maynard, between Brockett and Maynard and Fochie River and Kerr River.
Will
It
they
was
be-
also called Thorny Thicket. It's called my yard that. That's about all I have.
And did you tell us about her walking to the beach?
No, I just found that.
Oh,
That's something
that's a good story.
It's something that I left out here that I just found, and it was the most important thing.
Louder.
Bill, after my husband, after Miss Alma was about 80, he says, you know, you ought to call Miss Alma someday and see if she wants to walk to the beach.
To the beach.
As long as the beach was only 7 miles, or 8, Current River Beach, and anytime kids needed somebody to chaperone them and walk to the beach, Miss Alma never turns you down. If you were with a bunch of Girl Scouts or a bunch of boys and girls, and they needed somebody to walk from here to the beach, Miss Alma was the one to ask, because, and we all, the rest of us, wore tinny pumps, something flat, you know, and we'd strike out and walk every step of the way up there. And Miss Alma was heavy, and she wore these little high pumps, and how she walked in them, I never did know. But she would walk in those little high pumps every time, and she never turned us down. She must have gone 10 or 15 times. with us every time we wanted to go. Yes, let's go. And here we would go. And something else I remembered about that time, her sister had gotten very old and forgetful. Miss Moyna was a teacher also, and she had to quit teaching and such. And Miss Alma told me one day at school, I was teaching part-time too. I was a substitute, and she said, Ann, I tell you, Mama and Moyna are driving me crazy. She said, I get up and get ready for school, and I fix their breakfast, and about 30 minutes later, Mama says, Alma, have I had breakfast? And she says, you know, I have to fix her breakfast again. And about the time I get her breakfast fixed, Moyna says, Alma, have I had breakfast? That makes 4 breakfasts I have to fix every morning. Oh, my goodness. I guess we're through.
You know, it's a privilege to grow up in your own hometown.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's, I've had so much fun here, and I know so many people. One little story I remember, Tom used to run around Tom Baker all the time. He was another one of my fishing buddies. Bill,
Yeah.
Bill was another one.
Well, Tom was the one that got that.
Oh, yeah, hit him in the head.
And Bill's head.
It had
Fish hook me.
fish, it had 9 hooks on it. And,
Yes.
I was paddling the boat,
This is
of
my
course.
husband.
I'd keep old Tom out where he's in the middle fishing, and where he couldn't reach the bank, you know, and he'd turn around and frown at me. He'd do me the same way. And in a minute, he threw that thing, and it locked up on me, hit old Bill right in the head. And, yeah, and it got, there's a little gristle in there, got on there, and I couldn't cut it out. And
No.
Tom said, here, I've got a handkerchief, and Bill said, I don't want that handkerchief, you've been using it for all week. And blood streaming down his face, and we went from up around King's cabin all the way down to Park River Beach at Teton Island. And then right after that, we were fishing one day and got ready to quit, and Bill said, one more cast. He put minnow out there in Mert's Bennett Pond, and he got hung up. Well, he got mad, and he started walking backwards. And then I said, boy, I heard it. He said, pow! I thought the line broke. Well, the hook broke. Where it comes, where it just broke in two. And then shot back and hit old Bill right in the back. Oh. And I mean, nothing but monofilament line was there.
Oh.
So I had to, he was smoking a cigarette. I got one of the cigarettes and took him over, and I talked to him, and he just grunted. I said, let me see if I can see what that is. And he right brought Dr. Scott over there, and he got him down, and he wiggled it, and in a minute he come out with it. Bill was talking again.
Next day I went in the bank and one of them, I believe it was old, what's his name there? Matt said, you know, I heard that Bill Carroll, your husband, was wound up backwards.
Well, that
And I agreed with that.
Yeah. Does anybody have any recollections of Miss Alma or fishing stories or whatever you want to tell? Yeah, go
I
ahead,
was
ma'am.
talking to Pat Jones live, and she said, you remember we were in study hall, and so you raised your hand to go to the bathroom, and Miss Alma let you go, and she said, I waited a few minutes, and then I raised my hand to go, and she said, Patsy, I think Mary Nell can find the bathroom by herself. You didn't put anything over in Miss Alma. We just wanted to go visit.
Sure.
Miss Alma went on our senior trip with us. Will and I.
Yours was the last one we
No.
took.
You got it, baby.
This class, 1954, after they went, they said no more. You couldn't go anymore. And so we'd already raised money, and so we decided we'd go anyway if the school didn't sponsor us. But they talked Miss Alma, Miss Gibson, and Rudy into it.
James Reed.
Reedy.
Reedy, okay, I'm sorry, Reedy.
James Reed.
James Reedy.
Well, where'd you go?
We went to New Orleans. Oh my God.
And that was the last one.
He's exactly right.
And Miss
You're
Alma
exactly
had
right.
a blast. She just had more fun, and the boys were always aggravating her. And Bobby Jackson, they were going to go downtown on their own, and he was crawling out the window out of the motel, and Miss Alma was in the back waiting on him. Scared him to death, and he fell out of the window down into the little tree thing they had there. And he had to go back in and take a shower and change clothes, but she just had a ball. She really did.
Well, I was scared to death of Miss Alma, and I remember walking to school every day, and when I got to her house, I was scared of her house. I'd run past her.
I'm told terrified bit about it.
You know, for those of you who don't know, her house is on Black Street there between Bar and Thomasville. It's one of those, and it's still there, right? It's still there.
Yeah, it's
Is
still
that one of those white houses on
Where I
the
couldn't get past.
north side?
Now, their family built, an RJ built a house right next to them.
Yeah.
And incidentally, that brick came from Manson School,
Oh, I be
where Miss Alma taught. And they tore the old school down and he got the brick built.
Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Jay.
I still have the old house where she was born,
Really? Where's that?
out on Tennessee Creek in the Hamill community.
What was Miss Alma's maiden name?
Spike. She was a Spike when she married a Spike. Yeah, right.
They were distantly related.
Do what?
Mike,
Is that right?
you didn't have a way to go, so if you knew somebody a mile and a half down the road, if you were cousins, thirds, it was
Part
okay.
of her old farm.
Yeah, the whole farm. I've got the,
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Steve, do you all remember anything about your grandma?
well, you talk about the house on Black Street, she had a big green swing out on the front, and we'd spent the night over there one night, and Bill was talking about Mary Bentley's son, Bob Barnett. We should have known early on that he was gonna be a dentist. We got up one morning, Alma couldn't find her teeth anywhere. We looked all over the house. Finally, I went outside and Bob Barnett was sitting in the swing and he had the upper and lower both in his mouth.
I think Bob is going to be watching this video.
I hope he doesn't know I told on him.
Sitting there with the
I was, as a kid growing up though, and we stayed over there a lot, I was really impressed at the number of ex-students that came by to visit her when they came back to Pocahontas. Was impressive.
That's cool.
Of course, I know this didn't happen, it didn't come to fruition, but Miss Alma told some of us girls one day, we all loved Miss Alma, and we'd gather around and we'd talk about everything. She said, you know, girls, when I die, nothing would make me happier than to have my funeral at Methodist Church and then be carried to the cemetery and be followed by all my students.
Oh, my goodness.
So that's why everybody loved Miss Alma, because Miss Alma loved all of us. She may have been a bear sometimes,
Well.
but actually she's kind of a typical.
I was scared to death of her, but she never did laugh. I understand
that's
she's
why
pretty
they-
good with her right hand.
That's why they had her in that study hall. She was the only one that could keep quiet.
I had her in study hall,
Yeah.
and it took me 2 days to learn you better study, or this lady said.
Yeah.
And there was 4 boys sitting at the back, like she's talking about one day. We was there before lunch, and they were shooting dice. Bad ending.
She almost killed Lindor Spinner. Lindor Spinner one day because he just had to have that spreading at her. in his pocket, his pocket, and it came out one day and scared the girls. You never heard such screaming in all your life. Of course, it was a snake, and he had to carry it in his top pocket here in his shirt. Miss Alma nearly killed him.
Did you have her for anything?
Does anybody remember Miss Alma coming
Well, I
down?
think we're ready to
Oh, yeah, I
raffle.
do. Yeah, I remember the
First
sprinkle
thing,
and,
maybe
yeah.
we're not ready.